Hey guys, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. One of the most common questions I get asked on every propagation video that I do, and there's quite a few out there now, is can you do this cutting in water? Now, whatever it might be, it could be anything from a cherry laurel to a willow, but I get asked that question a lot. And some plants, the answer is yes, you can, and they do very well that way, but they are usually easier to root type plants. And so there can be some disadvantages to doing certain types of plants in water methods that actually are not going to be beneficial to the plant in the long run. In fact, a lot of cuttings just won't work in water. They'll sit there, they'll languish, and they'll suffer. So today, let's talk about some of those disadvantages to doing cuttings in water, and we'll just kind of walk through all that stuff. So what I've got right here are 4 different types of cuttings that I've rooted all in water. And they're ones that will do well in water, pretty reliably. You don't have too many issues with them, but they are very easy to root plants that would be successful in a regular rooting medium or just a neutral medium like a peat and perlite or peat and vermiculite or a sand medium. Any of those would work very well with these particular types of cuttings. And they're all easy to root plants. So like right here we have some Japanese dappled willows, one of my favorite shrubs to plant. You can't really see the dappled variation in it, but you will in the springtime when they start to come out. These are so easy to root, but you can also do them in soil, and that's probably the better method. This here is a basil plant. I did some cuttings of basil before the frost happened. In fact, I did cuttings in a video with all 3 of these just a couple weeks ago before we had our first frost. And you can see that they have done really well in here. But what you've got are cuttings that are not adapted to a soil medium at the moment. And we'll get more into that in a minute. Right here we have some Coleus, and they have started to root. You can see some small white pieces of root coming along the stems right there. And this is the pineapple sage that we've got. And again, it's got some small roots forming. And they can do very well in a water medium. Probably need a little bit more time on some of these. I think what I'll probably end up with is a couple of cuttings out of each of these 2 here that have roots that I can put into a pot, while the others are not going to be as rooted. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put them all into a pot and let them form the roots in that medium instead. So the main disadvantage to doing your cuttings in water is that the roots are not as well developed as they would have been in another medium. And because of that, they can risk transplant shock when you're moving them into another type of medium. They're going to have to redevelop the roots and cells that they need to create those roots to gather nutrients. And so those are some big disadvantages there. The other problem that you'll end up getting sometimes is stagnation in the water. The water starts to get a little bit cloudy. You can see this one's probably a little bit on the cloudy side right now. I have refilled the water and replaced the water a couple times, but it still will develop this over time. And so you don't want it to be stagnant. You want to have nice, clean, fresh water in it. So sometimes if you're not paying attention to it for a little bit, it can get away from you and you forget to change it, then it starts to stagnate a little while. And that can lead to other issues like root rot. So your stems will start to rot from the bottom and they're just not going to be viable after that. In the case of these willows, I didn't really have to change them. I just had to keep adding water because they sucked up the water really, really quickly. In fact, one day I looked at them and they were completely empty of water, and I refilled the water. Of course, they're fine, but they really pull in the water into their systems. So you've got to make sure that you're changing the water to keep the water from getting stagnant and so that those roots can grow healthy. What is that? It's a random oak tree. For the majority of my cuttings, I like using different types of medium that are not water. This one here, these are all little finely chopped up wood chips. Basically, you buy them as soil conditioner at your local hardware stores. And they do a really good job, like here in the case of this boxwood. You can see here they've got plenty of good roots. It's a nice loose medium, and they don't have any trouble at all rooting in something like that. I would also put peat down in this and put sand on top. And that has had really good results for me because what happens is it's a neutral medium in both areas. The sand gives you a little bit of drainage on top so they don't get waterlogged, and the moisture gets retained in the bottom with the peat. So you kind of have a really good balance of things. At least that's what I've found so far. And of course we're doing that in pots that have drainage, and very often I'll have this in a secondary pot or a container that's a 10-20 container that doesn't have any holes in it, so it does retain a little extra moisture, just like this right here. So, and these are some boxwoods I potted up after that. Well, we're going to pot up these plants right here, and so we can kind of check out the root systems and see how they do next. They did pretty well. We'll probably start a few more here because most of these plants actually survived the frost okay this first time, and gives us another chance to get a few more cuttings. So right here we're going to start with doing the first 4 of these willow cuttings right here, and we're just going to gently separate them out individually so we can see which ones we want to start with. They look really good, nice and healthy. The leaves are looking good. They've got some nice branching on the roots. I feel pretty good that these are going to do just fine once I get them potted up into something better. And you want to be real careful, real gentle with those roots, because those roots can break off, and you don't want that to happen. Nope. All right, so here we go. We got quite a few. I forgot how many of these I actually took, but pretty much every single one of these rooted. And that's pretty normal for willows because they root extremely easy. Just like that. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And we're just going to pot them in. And I filled up 4 containers here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move dirt from one container into the other, just like that, to fill them all up. Pretty easy. Firm it down. We'll water it in, and then we'll probably have to add a little bit more soil to the top to make sure it doesn't have any kind of root exposed at the top. So we'll just do that for all these. They all look kind of about the same condition. There's a couple that might, like this one, those roots look really good. So since we pulled out of that one, we'll just dump into the next one. Firm it down, and we are good to go. We'll just keep that process going through all these, and we'll see how many we get in the end. Alright, so I've got 3 pots set up, ready to go, and we're going to check out what these other cuttings have got in them. We'll start with this pineapple sage over here, and we're going to do it in this pot. It's kind of a shorter, it looks terracotta, but it's plastic. And we're just going to check out what our roots look like for the moment, and see how many of these have rooted. These have only been in the water for a couple weeks, so we'll check them out. Now, this one doesn't have anything in it. This one's got a little bitty root, so I think with that one I will go ahead and gently put it in. There's one, and I'm kind of putting it to the side so I'm not disturbing the root in any way. I'm just kind of putting the dirt back over top of it, or soil. I know some people get a little bit upset when you say dirt, but you know, right here, that one needs more time. That one needs more time. They smell really good. They're pineapple sage. That one needs a little bit more time. It looks like we've only got 2 rooted so far, but the rest of these still look healthy enough to continue growing in the water. So we'll see how that does. What I'll do here is I'll stick a 3rd one of them that doesn't have any roots into this container here, and we'll see how that one does. Just like that. Now for these other ones, the basil I want to put into this larger pot right here, because how great would it be to have some basil in the wintertime to enjoy with your dinner. So every one of these has got some good roots to them. You will note here we've got some leaves that are fading. Part of that is probably because there's no nutrients in the water. It's devoid of pretty much anything but whatever is in it, and a lot of that is tap water, so then you end up with chlorine and different stuff in it. So what we're going to do is just do the same thing here, tuck them in real gently. We'll put them all in the same pot. My goal for this basil is to simply have cuttings that in the springtime I take of this, and then I can put outdoors again. I might be able to separate them back out of this pot later, but I'm not really concerned about that as much as I am with having good material for making more cuttings. Again, it's kind of like a stock plant in a way, but with your edibles. Nice thing about doing a water cutting with basil is the fact that you're not having to worry about rooting hormone. You're getting a nice healthy plant with it. And it's so easy. So basil's one of those that I do like doing water cuttings with. And just because it is so prolific, it grows really well that way. So anyway, we'll pull that leaf off too, because again, we're getting some nutrient deficiencies there on those. But now that we've got them into some good potting soil, we should be okay with that. Now the Coleus, we've got a little bit more rooting, I think, than we had with the pineapple sage. This is just an ornamental plant. I just really like Coleus. It's really neat in the garden. Very colorful. You'll see there's some decent roots on it. And it looks like it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of them rooted. So that's pretty good. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll put them in here. And the same reason I rooted the basil is the same reason I rooted the Coleus. I just want to have cutting material for next spring. And one thing you can do if you want to is continue to take cuttings off of these as they grow in the wintertime and increase your supply of basil and then plant them in a big mass planting in your garden beds. They look amazing when you plant them all in a big group. So I'm going to add some extra soil to this container. And I may end up actually needing to transplant this later in the winter. It will give me something to enjoy in the garden though if I do. So yeah, we will add some additional soil to that. So I'm going to work the soil in and around the plants and they will be just fine. I generally don't prefer doing cuttings in water unless it's something that's extremely easy, like these cuttings right here, the Coleus, the basil, pineapple sage, the willows. Those are all really good to root in water, and they will transplant okay. They just take a little bit of time to adjust back to the soil. But if you are doing harder to root plants, things like shrubs, trees, those type of plants are not going to root in a water medium very easily. You'll probably find a few here and there, but you'll have more success if you're using a different type of medium that is more of a soil-based medium. Sand, peat mixed with a perlite or vermiculite, or even cocoa coir. All of those would be great options to root trees in. Over here, the basil, all 5 of them rooted. They did really well. We had all of the Coleus with a little bit of roots, and now we're transferring it here so they can grow better root systems in the soil. And we had 2 of quite a few of the pineapple sage ones root, but they are all still healthy and still capable of performing and getting some roots out there, but we got to wait and see what those others are going to do. So in checking the numbers, we've got 6 willows in this flat, 6 in that flat, and 5 in the other one, for a total of 17 willow plants that all rooted very well in water, and they should adapt very well to the soil now that they're transplanted. So guys, I hope that gave you some insight into why I think that the rooting medium is better in soil than it is in water. There are definitely cases where water works well and should be fine to use if you want to do it that way. So I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. I really appreciate you watching. Hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Growing the Home Garden. Thanks for watching.